Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. In today's episode, I'm talking about how I make family dinners happen. So last week I talked about the why, and today I'm getting more into the how of making that happen. So number one tip on how to make family dinners happen is to decide that it's a priority. And this is usually a decision that needs to happen with both partners. So my husband and I are both on the same page that dinner is important, and having, family dinner is important. What this looks like in your household and how the schedules come together is something, you have to sit down and decide. For us, this means having dinner at 5 p.m. Every single night. Of course, there are exceptions and times when it doesn't work, but the default is that it does. So the first way of making it happen is everyone's on the same page that the timing works and that it is important to our household. From there, how do I, plan out and make it work on a week-to-week basis? So first step is always looking at the calendar. This it helps avoid assuming. I think sometimes people, they get overwhelmed with meal plan of like, oh my gosh, like 7 dinners a week. Well, when you look at your calendar, it may be that like, oh, wow, well, this week we're actually only home for 4 dinners. So, the amount of dinners you thought you needed to make might have just got cut in half. And so, that's a good place to start. And, also I've made this mistake of like, I don't look at the calendar. I think we're home every week. You buy too much food. And then it's like, oh, well, this thing's going to go to waste, or, and no one likes to have extra food sitting in the back of their fridge going to waste. So even when using, the Prep Dish meal plans, which, on most weeks is how I'm planning my meals, I still need to make sure I'm looking at my calendar. How many meals am I going to have? Do I want to double up a meal so that, maybe there's one night where we're going to be rushed or the boys have an activity. So maybe that night we're going to do leftovers, or I make a chili or something that can be in the crock pot so I can get it ready earlier than needed. So just looking at the calendar and figuring out what each week is going to look like, that's always my first step of figuring, okay, what am I going to need for the upcoming week? Then, doing that grocery order. I'm always having groceries delivered. We don't live close to a grocery store, and there's a few that now deliver out where we are in the country. So that's been a blessing. With Prep Dish, we do have Instacart links where it's kind of one click and your cart's filled with everything you need. So that is a huge time saver. And then I also have the rest of everything we need sort of into a system of I don't have to think about it much. So snacks for the kids, they just kind of know their morning snack is a fruit, their afternoon snack is a vegetable. We do a rotation for breakfast of the same items. So, I just kind of have a quick checklist of all of the items that are needed above and beyond dinners. That way, I don't get bogged down with a lot of decision making that needs to happen for the groceries, because that's the other key piece. We actually talked about this years ago on the Prep Dish team of like, okay, well, what's holding you back from making the meal plans or getting, meals on the table? And sometimes it's as simple as like, oh, I just need to order the groceries. Because once they're ordered, then they show up and then the whole process starts. So sometimes it's just like finding a time on the calendar. And so for me, sometimes that means scheduling, okay, on Friday at 2:00, I am going to make sure I order the groceries so that then over the weekend, I can look at the meals, maybe do some meal prep and have it all happening. So maybe something that seems obvious, but also it is a key piece, is getting the groceries there. And then day to day, this is something I've talked about of like, okay, what season of life are you in? Prep Dish is based around providing you with meal prep instructions. How do you spend an hour or two on Sunday afternoon or Monday evening doing a lot of, the chopping and the mixing up of like dressings and marinades, so that then that way throughout the week, it's really quick and simple and easy. That works wonderfully. I've done that a lot in past seasons. Right now, a lot of weeks, it depends on the week. Now, if I have a heavier work week, meal prep for sure all the way. I enjoy doing that, even with the kids sometimes. But right now, a lot of weeks, it's actually easier for me to do most of the prep the night of. Maybe like on Monday night when I'm making dinner, I will prep a few items for the next day, or, prep ahead some items. But I find right now it's nice for me to have that time between my work and dinner to kind of like decompress and, prepare the dinner, and the kids will come in and help. So that's kind of what's working for me right now. I've had some seasons where meal prep was every single week without fail because it just helped me, be able to focus on work during the day and then get into dinner without having to think about it. And, again, there's weeks like that still. So it's just figuring out kind of week to week or season to season what works best there. And, again, the Prep Dish meal plans still work, still allow me to have everything planned out. I know what I'm doing. I'm still not needing to think about the meal until, I'm ready to start, so it's really still kind of like done for me in terms of the thinking part, which is what I found to be the biggest barrier between, getting meals on the table. So yeah, that's how I'm doing it on a week to week basis right now. Again, it's not always every night. Some weeks are going to look different, but I'm still relying heavily on if the meal plans. And if you would like to try, the trial is prepdish.com/MPM. If there's anyone listening that, has not tried the meal plans and would like some help with guidance on, what to make every night, some grocery lists, the meal prep instructions. And if you're listening to this and you are currently a Prep Dish subscriber, first, thank you for being a subscriber. And second, hopefully you can get some inspiration from here to, if you need to reevaluate what's working for you, what's not, how you can best use the plans. I'll try and link in the show notes, but I have some past episodes on, making the meal plans work for you. One of the reasons I did want to come back and do a few episodes this month is I find with our listeners, I know some of the listeners are not Prep Dish subscribers, but I know there are some Prep Dish subscribers that listen to these episodes. And so I also just like to get on because I find a way to personally talk to you. I have the newsletters, but sometimes those, I don't know how much those get read. And so I feel like it's good to come on and connect in this way and just, some little messages of encouragement on how to help support you in getting those dinners on the table, because we all know, all of you out there that are listening that are moms or, just have a full life, that getting those meals on the table can be a job in and of itself. And at Prep Dish, we're here to support you with that. So that's all I have for this week. I do have at least one more episode planned for this month. Next week, I'm going to talk more about some updates on not just meals, but other kind of family rhythm updates and just a few other things to share as well. So I do have another episode and we'll be back again next Monday.